Well, good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock, everyone. And I'd like to, we'll go ahead and get started with our program this afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Diane Burnett, and I am the co-principal investigator for the HBCU Academic Librarian OER Grant Project. And I want to again welcome everyone to the first of our webinar series.
Sorry, I'm plugging it in, but it's coming out.
Okay, bye-bye.
On behalf of our principal investigator, Dr. Ruth Hodges, and the entire project team, I'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of professional development webinars covering various topics related to open education resources. We hope that you will find the information shared during these sessions will either springboard OER initiatives on your campus or enlighten you to new ideas and solutions that will strengthen your existing OER programs. Before we get started, I just have a couple of a few housekeeping details to cover. First, again, please mute your microphones. I'm still hearing some background noise interference. So if you've just joined us, make sure that you have your microphones on mute. Questions. You may post your questions for the presenter in the chat window. We will have staff who will be monitoring the chat window. And towards the end of the program, we will pause and allow you to, and allow our staff to actually present your questions to the presenter. We may not get to them all, but we will certainly do our best. And finally, we are recording this webinar, and you will receive information on how to access the webinar recordings for delayed viewing later. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our guest speaker for today's program, entitled Finding Quality Open Textbooks, the OpenStax Experience, presented by Mr. Daniel Williamson. Mr. Williamson is the managing director at OpenStax, and which is one of the largest OER providers in the world. And as managing director of OpenStax, Daniel leads the day-to-day operations using his extensive experience in educational technology to guide content development, technology integration, and overall project coordination. Most recently, Daniel has been involved with the city's Health Equity Response Task Force in Houston, Texas, as well as CARES Funding Act for Houston. But I definitely want to share that Mr. Williamson is also a trained opera singer. But if you happen to be in the Houston area, you might spot him in a karaoke bar singing country music. So we are going to get underway with our webinar. It is my pleasure, again, to present to you Mr. Daniel Williamson, who will be sharing with us on the topic of finding quality open textbook, the OpenStax resource.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dr. Burnett. I don't know if I'm going to be gracing you with any opera on this presentation, but again, if you find yourself at, say, karaoke at the Open Ed conference, you might get a little taste of that. Or if you already have been at the Open Ed conference in the past, you might have already heard a taste of that. So again, thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. And I just want to start by thanking you all for joining me on this webinar today. I have such gratitude for librarians and for folks who are working with our students, especially during this incredibly challenging year. This is definitely a school year like none, at least I've ever seen before. And I know that the work that librarians are doing this year to make sure that students have access to the resources that they need, both for their research as well as for their academic endeavors, is just so incredibly important. So I just want to take a time and thank you for overcoming so many challenges. Today, during this talk, I'm going to be using a tool called Mentimeter. So if you have a phone nearby, could you please go to menti.com using your browser, and then also type in this code 439440. This will give us an opportunity to actually interact. You'll be able to fill out some forms and give me some feedback as we're going through this presentation. And hopefully it'll make it a little bit more fun than just me talking at y'all the whole time. So I'm going to go ahead and take us to our next slide, which is actually one of these Mentimeter quizzes or polls. So just to get us started, something a little bit fun. If you could take a look at these cats down here at the bottom and choose the one that best represents you and how you're feeling today. All right, we got a disco kitty. I like that. Disco kitty is always a good choice, in my opinion. We got strategy cat, sleepy cat. Uh-oh. Who didn't get their coffee breaks today? We got a couple of happy cats. Okay, that's good news. Good news. But sleepy cat is definitely in the winning position at the moment. One grumpy cat. Uh-oh. Well, hopefully I can turn that around a little bit through the presentation. Okay, so it sounds like I'm gonna need to give you all a lot of energy this afternoon. Make sure I can wake you all up. But I'm glad to see we got some people ready to focus in on strategy. Got some people who are ready to party. We got one grumpy cat and we got 5 happy cats. So thank you all so much for that feedback. Okay, so the next question that I have for you is, how many of you are familiar with OpenStax? All right, got some maybes, got a no, got some bunches of yeses, so that's good news. When I started back in 2012 with OpenStax, this would have been all gray because nobody knew what OpenStax was. So I'm happy to see that over 50% of you have heard of OpenStax, and maybe even more, and we'll clarify that for those maybes, whether or not you actually have heard of OpenStax. So I'm lucky because I'm the very first person in the series. So I'm gonna ask you a question, and hopefully maybe our last presenter, maybe Dr. Burnett can convince them to ask this question again, which is, what comes to mind when you think about OpenStax or open educational resources? Just put in any words that you think of when you think of open educational resources or OpenStax. Quality, free, yep, okay, good. Free, got a lot of frees. Equity, student savings, textbooks, reusable, I like that. Hard to find. Okay, let's fix that one. Hopefully I can help with that one. Let's see. It's moving so quickly, I'm having trouble reading it. Affordable, excellent. Online, personalizable, good, I like that. Cost effective. Online, academic freedom, that's a very, very good term to throw in there for open educational resources or OpenStax, really like that. Lowering cost, accessible, excellent. Great, well, thank you so much for jumping in and playing with Mentimeter. I will be using this throughout the presentation, so don't let your phone walk off too far. But I am gonna keep us going. And the other thing I wanted to share is what the feedback you've put here, I will share back with Dr. Burnett, and she will be able to actually share all of the feedback that you're providing as well, so that y'all have a record of this survey as well. Okay, so our work at OpenStax really started more than 2 decades ago, but today I'm really going to focus on this agenda, an overview of who we are at OpenStax, what we do, some of the challenges around the myth versus reality and the student experience, and the challenges and opportunities that they're facing, and opportunities for our work in the open education space moving forward. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that today. But I always like to start with who we are at OpenStax and our mission. So our mission at OpenStax is to transform learning so that education works for every student. This all started more than 2 decades ago, back in 1999, when we launched as one of the very first repositories for open educational resources. Some of you might remember a project called Connections with an X. That's where we get the X for OpenStax. Well, in 2012, let's fast forward from 1999, from when we started, to 2012, we became increasingly alarmed at the ever increasing cost of course materials. Textbooks were simply becoming out of reach for most students. The textbook for prices were, $2, $3, even sometimes $400. And in an effort to try to tackle this challenge and accelerate a solution to this pressing textbook affordability problem, OpenStax was really born. So our mission is to transform learning so that it works for every single student. And that's a really aggressive and lofty goal, right? So we know that our mission is lofty, but we tackle this with a very practical approach. At OpenStax, we focus on what we call big little ideas. And these are these simple ideas with really big impact. At OpenStax, we really like to think outside the box. We don't let the status quo get in the way. And in fact, at OpenStax, we often use a problem-solving technique called the GPS method when we are generating solutions to our problems. We first identify the really good parts of the solution, all the things that we like about it. Then we move on to the potential barriers or the problems associated with it. And then we are required, as part of this brainstorming session, to generate solutions for all the problems that we brainstormed. So this allows us the opportunity to reimagine learning experiences and not just get stuck on the reasons why it wouldn't work. If we had gotten stuck on all the problems of why it wouldn't work to publish openly licensed, high quality, peer-reviewed textbooks back in 2012, we'd still have $400, $500 textbooks. And finally, as an organization, one of the things we are really, really focused on is creating, we're metrics driven, and we want to create measurable change in the marketplace and for our students. And so we work extremely hard to measure the impact of our work and the impact that it has had on students' lives and on the education system as a whole. So what do we actually do? Let's talk a little bit about these big little ideas that we are working on at OpenStax. So most notably, OpenStax is known for our freely available, openly licensed textbooks. We have 42 of these textbooks currently available. They are, freely available to students. They're available in print for students who need a print copy. They're available digitally. Students and instructors can download PDFs and other resources to go along with that. And it's just saving students tons and tons of money. In addition to the textbooks, and where we're spending a lot of energy today, especially with COVID, is focused on creating tools that help faculty and students take better advantage of the educational titles that we have available. So over the last year, we've released a brand new reading experience, a digital reading experience for students that has integrated highlighting and note-taking and capabilities beyond that, including study guides for students. So now when students are relying more and more on reference materials, we're trying to make it more streamlined for them so they can take better advantage of these digital tools. So we have those study guides available for a subset of our resources right now, including our American government title, US history, principles of management, intro to business, as well as our second edition of principles of economics. Also in that technology category, we've created low-cost courseware and online homework systems, including our OpenStax Tutor platform, which is an adaptive learning platform built on top of our core content. But the thing that makes our technology so exciting is that it's really rooted in deep scientific research. We are part of Rice University. We are committed to academic freedom and academic integrity. And part of that is really investing in high quality research to leverage cognitive science to improve student learning. So we look at the best practices in the literature and try to apply that in our technology so that students can take advantage of things like spaced retrieval practice and also expand our understanding of what strategies work best to improve student success. And finally, we are an advocacy organization. We fight for students. It's core to who we are because we believe that everyone should be able to learn anything they want. And we work to identify the barriers and opportunities to really solve these big challenges. And we advocate for these solutions from from Capitol Hill to the State House to make sure that there are policies in place to benefit organizations that are looking to advance student success on their campuses. So I mentioned this ahead of time, but I think it's important to call out some important facts. So OpenStax is part of Rice University. Often this is overlooked because we do have a fantastic marketing team, and they've done such a great job developing such a strong brand. Most people recognize the covers of our textbooks instantaneously, and they know our logo, which is really, really great, but they often miss the fact that we are actually part of Rice University. We are part of an academic institution. And we are, because we are part of Rice University, we are a nonprofit. And we are funded by philanthropies like the Hewlett Foundation, Gates Foundation, and among many, many others. And something that's incredibly important to us, though, is that OpenStax is a sustainable organization. We partner with over 55 technology partners, nonprofit and for-profit, to provide value-added solutions on top of the online content that we provide. Things like online homework systems, adaptive learning platforms, flashcard apps, and other distribution platforms to really make sure that OpenStax remains sustainable, can keep our content up to date, and stay relevant into the future. So I am going to do a little quiz right here. So if everybody can make sure they have their phone ready, as soon as I flip it over, everybody will be able to answer a question. All right, I'm going to let it get up to about 30. We're almost there. And I'm about to go. Here we go. Ready, set. You'll have 20 seconds to answer this question. So the question is, how much money has OpenStax saved students since 2012? Yeah, 17 seconds, 16 seconds. Hopefully y'all can see that countdown. All right, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh no! Unfortunately, no one got it right. So I'll give you the big reveal then. That's great news. No one got it right. So since 2012, we've had over 39,000 faculty adopters serving more than 14 million students, and we've saved students $1.2 billion since 2012. And this is not just because OpenStax exists. It's because of the amazing work that librarians, that faculty have done to really go out and adopt and adapt open educational resources from OpenStax. So this is really our collective win. And I'm glad that I was able to share some new statistics with you, but it's incredibly exciting for us. We just passed this milestone this school year. And I want to thank you all for how much work you've done to help make that possible. So thanks so much for all of your help there. So as I was mentioning, 39,000 faculty. That's across 6,400 institutions around the world. They're using OpenStax, at least one book from OpenStax. We've got places all over the United States, including, I'm sure, some of your members like Prairie View A&M, Texas Southern, and I'm sure the list goes on and on and on. So we're really, really quite excited about that opportunity to continue to grow that list. And in fact, now in the United States, more than 60% of all degree granting institutions are using at least one OpenStax title. So I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what's new at OpenStax. So we just launched a bunch of new features for our textbooks, including updates to our library of resources. We now have additional high school textbooks available. We've also released new revisions to our books. And we also, just this fall, in reaction to the COVID pandemic, launched brand new course cartridges for our books. This makes it really easy for faculty to pull the course right into their LMS and launch it to students so they have seamless access to the OpenStax reading platform. The new titles that we've launched in the past year are Entrepreneurship, College Success, Business Law Essentials, high school statistics, high school physics, and advanced placement US history. We've also launched revisions for our psychology textbook, pre-algebra, elementary algebra, and intermediate algebra. And so we also, another really exciting thing that's coming out that will make adaptation even easier for faculty is all of our books will be available in Google Docs later this month and next month. So this will make it super, super easy for faculty to go and tweak, mix, and adapt the content to make it perfect for their students. And the reason we chose Google Docs over other platforms was one of our core values at OpenStax is to be obsessed with listening. And so we went out to the faculty members, we went out to instructional designers, and we asked, what do you really want? Do you want us to put this in Pressbooks? Do you want us to put this in another platform? What do you want? And overwhelmingly, they came back and said, we want Google Docs. We want something that we know how to use, that's easy for us to collaborate with our peers on and publish for our students to use. And so that's what we're doing. We also have our institutional partner network. This is a group of institutions that work with OpenStax for a year to really make measurable change on their campuses. So this year we revamped our institutional partner program to support even more schools and even more students. So we have an incredible cohort this year of schools participating in the program, and I'm excited to see what they will accomplish. And finally, we are partnering with the Colorado Department of Higher Education, the University of Maryland system, as well as the Society or Scholarly Publishing and Research Coalition, SPARC, who some of you may be members, to help facilitate a reimagining of the annual Open Ed conference. And that's actually going to be taking place November 9th through 13th, and registration is open right now. So if you want to dive deeper on open education, you want to see what other folks around the world are doing in the open education space, this is a great opportunity to really get involved and meet new people. It is going to be digital this year, but we have a ton of fantastic programming to bring people together and learn more about open education. So I hope you will join me there. You can find more information about the Open Ed Conference at openedconference.org. So this brings me to the next part of our discussion, which is we've made a ton of progress with open educational resources, but we still have a lot further to go and a lot more that we can do to support students. So how many of you are familiar with the sitcom Community? This is a pretty interesting show. I've watched it quite a bit. But it centers on this idea of these reluctant friends who are students at a fictional community college. Each one of these students has a unique backstory, but in some ways they fall into various stereotypes. For instance, you have the former high school football star, you have the student activist, you have a non-traditional older student who's returned to college out of boredom, right? And I think that this is a really interesting idea, right? You have these ideas of non-traditional students, but it poses some questions and challenges. What does non-traditional really mean, especially today? Last year, we had our National Student Intern Program where we had students from all over the country who participated in learning more about open educational resources and contributing new thoughts to how open education can really impact students. And this quote is actually from one of our interns last year, Henry, and he said, when we group students into categories such as traditional and non-traditional, we miss out on a big part of the conversation, which is how can we meet students where they are? And I think that this is incredibly poignant. You know, it creates these ideas of students in our heads, preventing us from seeing who they really are, the challenges they face, and the victories that they win, right? These victories that can be as small as, you know, just making it to class and getting out of bed, or it could be as big as this one, which always just like touches my heart. So this is a picture I found on the internet of a woman who shared a really, you know, interesting picture of humanity, where she's talking about how she just gave birth, but she had an exam tomorrow. And I just look at this picture and I'm so amazed that she was able to overcome these challenges and give birth, but also commit to her education. And we look at it, you know, it's just this beautiful picture of humanity. And then I got really excited when I noticed it. But back in the back, you know, this individual has a book from OpenStax. That green book back there is our psychology book. And it just like broke my heart to see this. But this is a victory. This is where, you know, she overcame so much pressure, so much against her to really advance herself, to make a better life for herself and her new baby. And I love that. And I love knowing that she didn't have to choose between a really expensive textbook, but she had the opportunity to use a freely available OpenStax one. And I mean, I don't think we've ever seen it quite like this. If we weren't already seeing it before, the pandemic is forcing us now to see the realities of students' identities and their experiences. This was an article from the New York Times back at the beginning of the pandemic, when all students kind of had their diaspora back away from their campuses, but back to their homes, wherever they might have lived. And the quote that I pulled from this is, you know, all of the differences are on display as each student struggles and deals with the pandemic from home and their different circumstances. And I think that's just so poignant right now, overcoming these challenges of not having a quiet place to study, or maybe dealing with family challenges before they were safe on their campuses. And so when we think about all of this, it helps us think about who our students are and who we're serving, and thinking about the question, what will benefit all students? This is a question we ask ourselves really often at OpenStax. We believe that it is incredibly important, an incredibly important step in figuring out what will have the biggest benefit for most students, or all students. We believe that it's greater availability of open educational resources, prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the resources that we're presenting to our students, and ditching forced purchasing programs and other harmful practices that limit and stifle academic freedom. So I'm going to consider each one of these in this discussion. So starting with this, what will benefit all students, increase in open educational resources. So what if we were able to have high quality, freely available, openly licensed educational materials for every single course? You know, the community, the open education community, is trying to get here. I think today, if you go to the open textbook library out of the University of Minnesota, there are probably maybe 350, 400 different titles that have been vetted and said are high quality course materials. And I think that's incredibly promising. So at OpenStax, we published 42 titles. That's a great amount of progress, but there's still so many additional resources that are needed. We do not have yet a comprehensive supply of high quality open educational resources that students and teachers need. And in fact, in a survey conducted from March to July of students and teachers when they hit the OpenStax website, when we asked them what we could do to help them during the pandemic, both students and educators responded overwhelmingly, please expand your library of textbooks. And so we are excited to announce that we do have a bunch of forthcoming titles available. That's exactly what we're doing, is continuing to release new titles, including a series of co-requisite support math titles, college algebra, pre-calculus, and algebra and trig, as well as additive manufacturing, introduction to intellectual property, as well as a third edition to our sociology text. We're also releasing Spanish translations of 6 of our titles. We're really excited about the impact that this can have on students who may not be native English speakers, or even students who may be trying to learn informally in the United States. And also, before we get there, also we just have a ton of forthcoming resources available. And so I always like to pause and ask this question, especially of librarians: what are the titles that you get the most requests from? What are the titles that you'd like to see OpenStax produce next? I use this data overwhelmingly to provide it back to our foundations to say, hey, here are the titles that are in highest demand. So I would love to see the titles that you think could be great for us to work on next. African American history, definitely need that one. Any other ideas? Some of the other one, okay, public relations, great. Media communications, accounting, excellent. Alt keys for writers, geometry, nursing. We've heard a lot of nursing requests, actually. That's a really popular one. Accounting. So we do actually have one accounting title. If you don't know it, you should check out openstax.org and you'll be able to see a subjects list. I believe that's under the business subsection. But nursing actually came out about a year ago. Or not nursing, accounting, sorry. History, excellent. Gender studies, excellent. Research essentials, global art history, excellent. State and local government, thank you, yes. European history, public relations. All right, excellent. This is really great. Thank you so much for providing this feedback. It's really helpful. It's really useful, especially because just a few weeks ago, about a month ago actually, we announced a new investment that's going to allow us to begin the work of doubling the OpenStax library. So thanks to foundation support, we are seeking to double our library of 42 titles to put out more and more open educational resources. So the feedback you just provided is really helpful as we start to prioritize those titles. We get really excited when faculty have the opportunity to spend less time searching for free, high quality resources and more time for focusing on making it perfect for their students. In fact, this is a quote from an individual who attended our Creator Fest conference earlier this spring. And so she says, now with open educational resources, I can focus on my student population, what's relevant to them, and the skills they need. And I just love that. So that is why, one of the big reasons why we are working to expand the scope of the OpenStax library in order to give educators greater academic freedom and the freedom they need to focus on what students need. Because we believe more OER will mean fewer and fewer students have to worry about paying for the textbook. Educators have more freedom to innovate in their classroom, and there's more opportunities for development of learning technologies. And finally, there's greater value placed on the idea that knowledge can and should be democratized. Excellent. So I'm going to keep going. This is the next question that we like to think when we think about what will benefit all students. And that's around prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in every program and process at OpenStax. So, what would it look like if we prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in course materials, educational technology, and our research? I think about 2 years ago, I was talking with Jasmine Roberts, who's an instructor at the Ohio State University, excuse me. And she was sharing at Creator Fest that the work begins with recognizing, appreciating, and amplifying student experience. That you're not teaching students content, you're teaching students. And I think that that's incredibly valuable, because when students see themselves in their education, they resonate with the content better and they have a better chance of success. And so at OpenStax, we really zoom in here. We are essentially an equity-focused organization. We focus on access, and we recognize that historical, systemic, and structural inequalities have created access barriers to education and learning. We also focus on justice. And social injustices in education are often part of broader beliefs, trends, and practices in our societies. And this has to represent itself in our work in having a diverse workforce, a diverse author base, providing equitable and fair treatment and equal opportunity for folks who are involved with our work and engaging with our content, and also making sure that we are inclusive. and inviting all people not just to use our content, but to participate in building out that content. And so, I will start by saying OpenStax is not perfect. We haven't always gotten it right, but we really have strong values, especially around listening. We are very lucky that we are not beholden to profits. We are beholden to our community. And so we listen to our community members. We are incredibly transparent about the feedback that we receive. We work to explain our logic and the changes that we make to our content and clearly demonstrate the changes and improvements that are being made in our content. And change, we are constantly working to reevaluate who is included in the conversation and the works and successes of our content. And so, we don't just say these things, we actually live this out. For errors, one of the things that I think is incredibly valuable with open educational resources is it is a transparent process. At OpenStax, you can go to our errata page and see every error or complaint that's ever been made about the OpenStax content and how we addressed it. We do that in real time so that faculty and instructors can see that information. But also, I think that this is a very valid point from Dr. Clinton here. So she said, I once contacted a publisher because a commercial textbook made errors in its definitions. They contacted me to try to sell me a new product. I contact OpenStax about errors, and they called me to make sure they correctly fixed them. We are part of the academic community. We listen deeply, and we work hard to be responsive and make changes to the content so that it is meeting the standards that our community is setting for us. And in fact, back in June, with all of the change and the challenges that our country was facing with regard to racism, our community, our organization, OpenStax, our employees wanted to put out a statement on racial injustice, education, and our role there. And we wrote, we have a responsibility to ensure that the knowledge we share is curated by diverse groups of people and representative of diverse histories and ideas. And this is just the beginning, this wasn't the beginning of this work at OpenStax, but it was a collective point of recognition of the urgency and importance with which OpenStax must respond to ensure that our work and our organization fully embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are committed to centering our work on equity. And again, we haven't always gotten it right. And we'll make mistakes again in the future, but we are listening, we are learning, and we're going to continue to get better. We are focused on creating equity, and we believe that OER can bring about this equity. And when we do that, we believe that means deepening the diversity and inclusion of student voices in the open education conversations. We believe that we have to be transparent in the processes and practices behind open educational resources and education technology development. We believe that students must see themselves and their experiences reflected in that content. And we have an ongoing effort to learn, collaborate, and improve for the best possible learning experiences. So we are not giving up. We're going to continue getting better. And we invite all of you to work with us to continue to sharpen ourselves, to make us better, to meet the needs of our community. All right. So this is the last big question. And this is more of a reflection on what's happening in the instructional materials space. So asking the question around what will benefit all students. And we believe that is moving away from course material models that harm students and stifle academic freedom. So what if all course materials were grounded in academic freedom? How many of you are familiar with inclusive access programs or digital discount programs? They go by a bunch of different names. Some might be Follett Access, others might be Day One programs, a bunch of different things. All right, so we got a few yes or yes, but we don't have that in my school. No, not familiar. Okay, excellent. Thanks so much for participating in this survey. Okay, excellent. Got it. Well, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but first I want to talk about what's happened that's really forced the publishers to create these new programs. So this is a chart of the Consumer Price Index. So it's looking at a variety of different categories and how their prices have changed relative to overall inflation. And if we look at the very top, you'll see, hospital services, college textbooks, and college tuitions grown. The price has inflated tremendously since 1998. In fact, here I think it's over 160% since 1998. So what's really exciting to us, though, is when we look at that college textbook line, we start to see that wobble, right? And the economist at the American Enterprise Institute, Mark Perry, said, the textbook bubble is finally starting to deflate due to the creative destruction and competition from free, low-cost textbooks from groups like OpenStax. So I think this is a great chart because it shows that we're beginning to make significant progress because of open educational resources and low-cost textbooks, driving that price down for students across the space. But unfortunately, this is also forcing the incumbents, the publishers, to look at new ways to regain control of the market. And I'm afraid that this could very easily, this progress we made, could very easily fade away. So now they're waking up, they're realizing that they're hemorrhaging market share and associated revenues, and they're responding. They proposed mergers to reduce competition and solidify market control, and they're releasing new pricing models that may be too good to be true. And so, we have the Pearson Digital First strategy, we have these inclusive access models that are emerging in this space, but they have a lot of downsides. So when we look from a student's perspective, this is an article from the New York Times. Basically, that digital textbook that you're using in your class, your college has already billed you for it. And so we get nervous when we start to see an erosion of student agency and their ability to choose what works best for their budget. We fear that for students, these inclusive access programs that automatically bill students for resources on a pre-negotiated contract between an institution and a publisher may result in students paying too much for textbooks, especially where there might be free options available, that students could have possibly purchased used rather than getting a brand new textbook. And there's overall confusion with these programs about how they might be able to opt out. And then from an educator perspective, we believe that this results in fewer choices when choosing course materials. So instead of looking at open educational resources and maybe a combination of other library resources even, this locks them into using something that's a solution from one of these major publishers with less flexibility to adapt that content. And then the real kind of kicker for me is that I don't really think you solve the textbook affordability problem by forcing all students to purchase a textbook. And in fact, we're seeing students rise up and say, this is not what we want. So textbook publishers have now been sued in a big lawsuit from student groups as well as retailers like used book providers, that this is actually creating a monopoly and it's an anti-competitive practice. And so it's no wonder that student groups are aggressively suing to stop these institutional inclusive access programs. And I think this sums it up pretty well from a student's perspective. You kind of have to wonder, they are going to be the ones, the publishers are going to be the ones to save us from the high textbook prices that they set. And the question that I always like to ask is, most of these programs are opt-out programs, meaning you are automatically going to be billed unless you go and search and find the button to opt out. And so if inclusive access programs offer such a great deal for students, if the price is so great, why wouldn't we let students opt in to paying that great deal? They are incredibly smart. They're great at finding the best bargain, right? They're great at shopping around. They would opt into a program that was the best for the buck and provided them with real value. So when we advocate for OER, we believe that means listening to what students, educators, content creators want, need, and value, that we recognize it's an incredibly complex system and schools are working to lower costs for students, but sometimes those cost reductions might come at a loss of agency for these students. And we believe that in order to successfully advocate for OER, we have to be continually increasing the supply of free, flexible textbooks and tools for instructors. And that's why we're actually launching a new initiative. We launched it about 2 weeks ago, called Free the Textbook. And this is a nationwide initiative where we're partnering with groups like the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education. We're partnering with the Creative Commons group. We are partnering with university educators and librarians and students and advocates to create truly inclusive solutions and make sure that we're examining the fine print on these inclusive access, or what we call automatic textbook billing programs, because we really want these solutions to be inclusive for all students and not just a way for publishers to regain market control. And we're asking folks to choose free textbooks first, especially where they're available for their classes, not just stay with a traditional solution. So please consider joining us. If your institution or you as an individual would like to participate and help us free the textbook, you can go to freethetextbook.org and join the movement, like all of these groups that are here on this page. So I believe that this is a really critical moment in education. The pandemic has shown us so much, and we have an incredible opportunity to take steps in the right direction right now, to create a more resilient and flexible education system that meets students where they are and helps them get to where they want to go. So we're seeing a tremendous increase in the demand for open educational resources. When we look at OpenStax, our site alone, we're seeing a 400% year-over-year increase in students accessing the content. And we know that learners and educators want highly flexible and free innovative solutions. And we believe that we can work together to create these tools and resources for our students and teachers. So if we all remember that idea of the big little idea
on the
that
Zoom meeting.
earlier,
My phone was 6%, by the way.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Could someone please mute their mic?
Sorry about that. So if we think about this idea, the big little idea, I think it all starts with listening, right? One of our core values, like I've said over and over again in this discussion, is to be obsessed with listening, to be willing to listen to students, to hear what they are telling us, and then to use that to generate new big little ideas. Students love open educational resources. I see it all the time on Twitter, on Reddit, and all the different places that students hang out today. And they go on Twitter and they express so much relief when they find out that their instructor has selected a freely available open educational resources over an expensive textbook. In fact, just a few days ago, I saw a faculty member, or I saw a student actually say, my biology teacher is using OpenStax biology text. He's an absolute legend. We all can be legends. And so I hope over this semester, over this school year, which I'm sure is going to be unlike any other we've ever seen before, where more students and more faculty are facing stresses of how will I afford this? How can I make this solution work for my class? That you will join OpenStax and search for your next big little idea that will significantly improve the lives of students. And so I want to thank you again for all of your commitment to your students and all you do to ensure that all students have every opportunity to succeed in their educational endeavors. We at OpenStax are here to help you. And with that, I will stop and take questions. And I'll actually go to the next slide so you can get my contact information, which is down at the bottom. If you have any questions or you'd like to get involved with OpenStax, you can always email me at dcwill@rice.edu.
Thank you, Daniel, for that wonderful presentation on OpenStax. At this time, we are going to open the program for questions from the audience. We ask that you please enter your questions in the chat window. We do have staff monitoring the chat window who will articulate your questions to Daniel. And Mrs. Goodwin, is there a question from the audience?
Not at this time. I don't have a question in the chat.
Okay.
I did that good of a job? No questions? Well, there's one thing I could do if folks want to see how easy it is to get the OpenStax resources. I can actually do a quick demo there to actually show that. That's one thing that probably would be helpful, especially for librarians. So let me get that queued up real quick.
Daniel, we do have one question.
We have one question.
Do you have textbooks and materials for literature and composition teachers as well as students?
That's a good question. So we are actually just now starting on composition. So that book is in production. So we will likely have that out in about a year. If you have faculty that are interested in potentially working on that, we would love to get their names. But the other question, or the other part of that question, I think, was, do you have materials for instructors versus just for students? And the answer to that question is yes. So with almost every single OpenStax title, we have instructor resources available. They do require that instructors register for an account, but it's really easy. And in fact, this year we put in place new resources to make it even faster for faculty to get verified. So I can quickly show you how that works. So I'll just go back and do a quick demo. So this is the openstax.org webpage. Here on the subjects page, you can click all and see every single title that is available. Let's just jump into, say, astronomy here. So on the left-hand side, you'll see all the book details, and you can check out a table of contents. You can click to view online, which will take you to the reading experience that has the highlighting and note-taking, like I told you about earlier. It's a nice, easy to use platform. You can load the app, download a PDF, or copies, get it on iBooks or Kindle. But then we also have this tab right here that talks about instructor resources. And so you'll see that these are locked right now, but to unlock them, you would simply register for a faculty account. I'm just gonna go ahead and log in with my Google account because I'm already faculty verified, I believe. So I am faculty verified, which now unlocks all of this. So you can download the course cartridges, get a video guide for the product, check out the OER Commons hubs. These are all a compilation of resources that have been contributed by the community. But we also have PowerPoint slides, instructor answers guides, sample syllabus materials, a bunch of different test banks, a bunch of different resources just for faculty. And we don't make those available to students because we don't want students taking that answer key or those test banks and sharing them with all of their friends. So we try to keep that safe within the locked behind an instructor verification.
Yes, we have another question. And the question is, how do faculty get involved in writing textbooks for this?
Yeah, great. So we pay faculty. We work in to find reviewers, authors, contributors. And so we are always looking for faculty. We usually work with an organization called WiseWire or MPS to help us source faculty. But if you have faculty who would be interested in participating, if you would shoot me an email at dcwill@rice.edu, I will actually connect you with our editorial director, and he can let you know a list of all the titles that we are currently have under development. And then we can try to match different faculty to those projects. And so that would be a really fantastic opportunity. One of the areas we're working on right now is around computer science. So if you have any faculty who are interested in working in computer science or computer business applications, that might be a really great area of collaboration.
Confirmations came back.
We're really excited about that.
We have another question. And the question is, if we order a print copy, how much would it cost us?
That's a great question. So it varies. It's based
I saw
on
the question. I'm just waiting on them to mute their mic.
well, hopefully you can hear me. So it depends on the length of the book. So we keep the prices as low as possible. If we look at all of the titles, I think our sociology book is about $28. I believe our most expensive title probably is this astronomy title. And that one I think is around $55 for the print copy. And these are four-color printed, four-color hardbound printed titles. But I know that we also have a new partnership with Xanadu to provide low-cost black and white copies as well. So it is fairly variable, but we try to keep those costs as low as humanly possible. And it's based solely on the length of the book. That's how we determine the price.
Well, thank you, Daniel. This is a very good demonstration. That was a treat that we weren't expected of how to actually find the various resources within OpenStax. If you could please, Daniel, just if you could type your email address into the chat window. So if there are faculty on the program today who are interested in becoming authors, then they can reach out to you for further information. But we want to, again, thank you for an excellent presentation and for the demonstration of how to find the wonderful resources that are available in OpenStax. Just for for our last few moments of the program, we'll just wrap up with a few final words. If you would give me just a moment. So again, as a reminder, those of you who are participating in the webinar today, we thank you so much for your attendance. We invite your comments and feedback. They are definitely welcome. So therefore, you can expect to receive an email within the next few days with the link to our evaluation form. And we certainly welcome your feedback as we strive to improve our webinars, as well as to measure your interest in the topics that are certainly being presented. Our next webinar is coming up on November 12th at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are very excited to have Katie Miller, who is the library director from Aiken Technical College in Aiken, South Carolina. And as Daniel touched on today in his presentation with regards to the social justice mission of open education resources, Katie is actually going to delve more into that topic by talking about open education resources as a social justice issue. So again, we invite you to register and be a part of that program coming up on November 12th. And certainly you may register by going to our project website. The URL is listed on the bottom of this page. It is the HBCU Academic Librarian Open Education Resource Project website. If you go to the home page and click on webinar, you will then be taken to the series of webinars that are included in, or the titles for the series of webinars that are included in this program, and you will be able to register for the November 12th registrar that will be presented on the social justice aspects of open education resources. With that, again, I'd like to thank Daniel. I'd also like to thank my colleagues who are members of the HBCU Academic Librarian OER project for all of their wonderful assistance. And we will close the webinar and again, wish you to have a very, very safe and happy evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.